Hello, everybody, and welcome to Primal Live today. I am so happy to be joined by my co-host, Christine Bailey. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Jody. Lovely to see you again on this great day. Lovely and sunny.
Beautiful, sunny day, which makes everything better. Absolutely lovely. How have you been? You all right?
Busy, yeah, very busy. We've been running quite a few cookery days, fermented food days, and we've got one coming up on inflammatory bowel disease. And of course, I've just finished, my new book is out, The Gut Health Diet, so that's out. And of course, next week it's Celiac Awareness Week.
Yes.
I've been posting some blogs on celiac disease, gluten, and we'll carry on doing some more of those. And then I'm flying off to the Institute of Functional Medicine to do a sports nutrition cookery day for them in San Diego. So it should be nice and sunny. I hope so.
It's fantastic that they're coming here to the UK to pluck you out and take you to America, where we always think that they're ahead, but we've got you and they want you. Yep. And they're taking you over there to lead them. That's amazing.
And you know, it's always so, I'm not being funny, but it's always so inspiring to be with the top guys from the IFM. They are just phenomenal. Their passion, their motivation, their knowledge, you know, and it's so science research based, which of course I absolutely love. So you immerse yourself about 3 or 4 days of these incredible speakers. So it's going to be great.
That'll be fantastic. And then you have all this new knowledge to bring back and share with us.
Yay. So, I mean, it's a nice conference this year. Well, it's always nice, but this one's all about exercise, movement, for longevity, for health and wellness. So it's not really just about, you know, elite athletes. This is about what are the strategies and the protocols that we should all be taking in terms of our exercise and how we train, but also the nutrition to support that as well. So, you know, it's
here. Obviously, that's in America. If anybody's here, is that in any way broadcast that people can subscribe to follow that forum or to follow the conference?
No, I mean, people can subscribe to the IFM. You have to become a member. You can get updates. Quite a lot of people from the UK actually fly over. Quite a lot of practitioners will fly over to listen to it. And then for those who are in the sort of medical and practitioner field like myself, every other year or so, some of the leading guys from the States come over to train people like myself as well. So, you know, there are those opportunities, but obviously you have to be quite
a lot more of them coming over as well with things like Refined Health. There's often people coming in and you know, putting on seminars, and often 2-day seminars, one more general public based, one much more practitioner based.
Yeah. So the difference with the IFM sort of, this is an annual conference. Some of this is also quite intense training as well. So rather than just a public 1-day thing, it's part of a series of different topics that they cover from the functional nutrition perspective. So very exciting. And how's it all going at Primal Roost?
Oh, everything's going well. There's lots of people who will hopefully be following this, and we'll be starting the Whole Life Challenge with us, which is an 8-week challenge that's going on. We're doing it in conjunction with CrossFit Camberley.
Right.
And so hopefully, you know, some of those guys will be joining us with our seminar that we've got going on in May 25th,
yeah,
24th with you. And that's a really exciting thing, because that's 8 weeks of trying to incorporate, it's not just diet, it's all sorts of different aspects of lifestyle. And so anybody who hasn't joined up yet, you can still join up. The start day is tomorrow. Right. But it's all about building a community and supporting each other through making some good lifelong habits, like incorporating stretching and, you know, some, you know, mental aspects of settling down and doing some meditation or journaling and just being aware of, you know, making more time for yourself and things like that. It's a great program.
So how do they sign up, Jody? How do they sign up?
They can go online. There's a website, wholelifechallenge.com. So we have a joint team, and the team is called Look Better Naked. So you just go in and join the Look Better Naked team, and it's all people from around the local area here. So we've got people from Camberley, Woking, Lightwater, West End, all around this kind of Surrey area who are a part of the team. All the information is on there, and it's really worth having a look at. And it's a great thing to get your friends to do with you, because it's trying to make you, make sustainable habits by bringing your friends along. So as opposed to you isolating yourself and trying to do a restrictive diet, it's about going, right, let's meet for breakfast, but let's go for a walk first together, and then go for breakfast, and then maybe we'll make some healthier choices because we're doing it together.
Yeah.
That's the concept. So I'm really quite excited about that. We've got our seminar coming up with you the last Wednesday of the month. I believe is May 25th. It is. The 24th is the Tuesday, which is filling up very fast. I think we have about 20 people on the list at the moment.
Oh, right.
Only got about room for 15 more people, and we will be heaving with that. So people are really excited about that seminar, Christine. So no pressure.
Good.
But there are loads of people waiting to come to that one. So I'm really pleased about that. And we also have a 6-week course that's kind of, again, a lifestyle course that's going to be running starting next Wednesday for 6 weeks. That's just talking to people about, again, how you can incorporate fermented foods in your life. Why is sleep important in your life? So there's lots of things happening around Roost. So on our website and Facebook pages and stuff, you can find out all about that stuff.
Sounds great.
So yeah, everything's busy. The weather's bringing everybody out of the woodwork.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah. So now let's get on with what we're going to talk about today. Yeah. We are going to be talking about incorporating fats in your diet and the importance of incorporating fats in your diet. Now, I just want to say to everybody who's joining us and watching, we can see your questions. And please stick with us to the end. We're going to address the questions at the very end, just so that it gives us the opportunity to keep the flow of the conversation going. And then if there's anything that might be out of context, we can address everything at that point in time. If anything does pop through that I see is really relevant, I will try to incorporate that in as we go. So
great.
So Christine, fats is a big controversial topic because there's this shift in thinking that instead of being in a low-fat diet, we've now shifted to fat is not bad, fat is good. Mm-hmm. So is all fat good? Should we eat all fat? How much fat? Where do we start?
Yeah, let's just talk about what a fat is. I think that might be useful. So from a chemical point of view, fats are just compounds of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms. And they basically exist in chains of different lengths. And that's quite important because that often gives us some idea of their use and their structure. So when we're talking about different fats, you've probably all heard of mono, polyunsaturated fats and saturated fats. So when we look at a monounsaturated fat, which is something like olive oil, what that means is that you have one single double bond in their fatty acid chain, hence mono. Basically, the more double bonds a fatty acid has, this is sort of double bonds with oxygen, the more
with the oxygen, not between the carbon atoms.
Yes, the more fluid it is. So monounsaturated have one double bond, and they're liquid at room temperature. You pour your olive oil, etc. So monounsaturates are known to be very heart healthy. This is very well recognized now. But obviously, because they've got this one double bond, they still are fairly vulnerable to heating. When you've got no double bonds and you've got all the carbon atoms joined, then you have a much more solid type of fat, and that's what we call a saturated fat. So they have all their carbon bonds are joined to hydrogen, so there's non-free. They don't have any of these double bonds at all. And so saturated fats found in things like coconut oil, butter, lard, ghee, things like that, they are they're generally solid at room temperature, and they are very heat stable. So when you heat them, they don't all break down so readily. The smoking point is a lot higher. And then you've got the ones on almost the more...
Yeah. Why is that important? Why is it important that they don't break down at these higher temperatures? What does that mean for us that they are able to stay in their form and not break down?
Yeah, well, because they don't have any of these double bonds, they are much more stable. So the carbon and the hydrogen are nicely, paired together. Now, what that means is they don't have the same tendency towards rancidity, so they don't go off, they don't break down, they don't become unstable. In fact, they're very stable. Now, why that is important is because just like free radical damage in our body, when you have something that's very unstable, it has the capacity to cause more damage to our body. And more destruction. And we have free radical, what we call damage done all the time. Every time we breathe, we have, there's damage being done, but we have lots of antioxidants that can protect us. But obviously we don't want a high load of substances that can cause lots of particular damage. The more shelf stable, the less havoc it will do to our bodies when we ingest them. So that's why, whatever type of fat that we're eating, we don't want to be eating rancid fat or fat that's been, really heated up or damaged in any way, because then that's going to cause potential destruction when we ingest it. Now, there's also the polyunsaturated. Now, poly means many. So this means that they have more than one double bond in their fatty acid chain. So they tend to be even more liquid. So almost actually, if you refrigerated them, so something like flaxseed oil, soybean oil, peanut oil, all of these would often, even if you stuck them in the fridge, would probably still be liquid. They can become very quickly oxidized. They are very vulnerable because they've got all these double bonds. They're not hold together. They're not as stable. So even bright sunlight or just warm temperatures can damage those. So that's why we often say to people, when you are, got a bottle of flaxseed oil or walnut oil or something, put it in the fridge once you've opened it. And often when you buy good quality polyunsaturated oils, sometimes they're, mixtures of flaxseed and hemp oil, they're often being dark bottles.
Yeah, to reflect, keep that light out.
Yeah. Now, within this category, we enter the essential fatty acids, because these are types of polyunsaturated fats. And most people have heard of essential fatty acids, or we call them omega-3 and omega-6. They're not, there's loads of omegas, but those are the ones people know about. Both are important, and the reason we call them essential is our bodies cannot make. That's why they're essential, and they are important. Both the 3s and the 6 are important for cell membrane function. For supporting the integrity of things like renal function, kidney function, skin integrity, gut integrity, all of that. But it's what we call having the right balance of these fats in the body. So omega-3, which is found in fish, cod liver oil, fish oil. It's also found in algae, it's found in flax, it's found in walnuts. Omega-3s, we've probably all heard about, because there's a lot of research into how they can be useful for brain health, for heart health, and so on. The omega-3s are also anti-inflammatory, so they lower inflammation in the body. But the omega-3s, when say I eat some flaxseed, my body has to then convert that into longer chains. So they're called EPA and DHA, effectively. Now, it's these ones that are most important for thinning the blood, fighting inflammation, supporting brain function, and so on. Now, the difference between having, say, a spoonful of flaxseed oil and a spoonful of cod liver oil is that cod liver oil actually contains these longer chain EPA and DHAs, but the flaxseed doesn't. It just contains the parent fat called ALA or omega-3. And so we have to convert the flaxseed. And our conversion is very, very poor. It's about 5%. So I would have to have a lot of spoonfuls of flaxseed oil to get the active components called EPA and DHA. Whereas if I had a spoonful of cod liver oil, I wouldn't need very much.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other problems, so that's one issue. Now, one of the other problems is that most of us generally have a lot of omega-6 in our diet. And when it's in excess, it can be actually inflammatory. So it can actually spur inflammation. And, you know, inflammation has been linked to so many health conditions, from heart disease to cancer, to diabetes, to brain problems, you know, as well as arthritis and so on. And omega-6 is found in things like corn oil, vegetable oils, sunflower oils, a lot of the typical, what I would say, yeah, cooking oils, and also spreads, of course. A lot of the margarines are full of omega-6. And so for some people, it's not necessarily that they're not eating any omega-3. It's just that they're eating a lot more omega-6 than they should be compared to the omega-3. And the balance, you know, and you know, obviously we talk a lot about the paleo sort of diet, or what did our ancestors eat. It is likely that they were more around, say, 2 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3. Whereas our diet in the Western world is about 20 to 1, which is very inflammatory. So one of the first things that a lot of people can do to improve their fat intake, or the type of fats, is to lower the amount of omega-6, which in excess is quite damaging for the body, and to focus more on oily fish, on flax, on walnut, on hemp seeds, on chia seeds in their diet.
Yeah. Because in those sources, will they still be getting both omega-3 and omega-6?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, was my volume's gone funny, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh dear. I'm going to pop out, Christine. You keep talking. I'm going to pop out and pop back in.
Okay. So I wouldn't, certainly, because polyunsaturates are, you know, quite vulnerable to heat and destruction, don't ever cook with them. That's another thing. Obviously, you can cook your fish, but don't pour lots of walnut oil or flaxseed oil and cook with it. It's not stable enough, because even though it's got the healthy omega-3s in, if you heat it, you're actually going to cause damaged fats, and damaged fats are not helpful for the body and for the health. And they will actually promote inflammation if they're damaged. So I generally say to people, if you want to cook with fats, and obviously we often do, you really ought to be choosing the fats that are most stable, because when you heat them, they're not going to break down. They're going to have a higher smoking point, so you can heat them without them being destructive. So that would be things like, you know, the saturated fats that I mentioned. So yeah, so good examples would be your coconut oil, your lard, your ghee, and so on.
I read recently in an article, and please tell me if I'm wrong, because it was just a random one I found on the internet, that olive oil, because olive oil seems to be getting a bad rap. Don't cook with it. Only cold pressed olive oil. Only use it for salad dressings. But then this article that I was reading was saying, no, olive oil is slightly different. You can cook with olive oil.
So
what's your feeling?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So olive oil is, generally speaking, richer in the monounsaturated fat. It contains about 75% of mono. So it does contain, you know, a little bit of poly and a bit of saturated as well. It's relatively heat stable. When you look at the smoking point, it's actually relatively heat stable at lower temperatures. So what I recommend people do is, there's no reason why you couldn't just drizzle it over some veg to roast in the oven, or do some low temperature cooking with it. That would be absolutely fine. But if you're going to be sort of almost
frying,
pan frying something at high temperatures, go back to your coconut oils, your lard, your ghee, and so on, because those are less likely to, you know, get to a temperature where they're going to start breaking down. And just before we talk, because I know you want to mention about the cholesterol thing, the other group, which shouldn't be in your diet at all, are what we call the trans fats. The body doesn't recognize transformed, and that's what it means. They're transformed fats. So it's unnatural chemical modification that has created trans fats. And the reason sometimes it's done is because it makes a product more shelf stable. So it's basically a hydrogenation. You're adding hydrogen atoms to a fatty acid chain to try and make it more stable. But the problem is our body doesn't recognize these fats. They have been transformed. The body doesn't recognize them. And, you know, trans fats in a lot of countries have obviously been banned. But what they do show is that they will cause a redistribution of fat tissues inside your abdomen. So you'll get a lot of belly fat. They will harden the cell membranes, so they make you more resistant to insulin, and they are more likely to build up around internal organs. Of course, that's not very good if you're talking about things like heart disease. So get those out. Now, they're found, so people think, well, how do I know? They're generally found in very processed products. Now, you can also get...
what would they say on a label? Would they, because it wouldn't say specifically trans fat, would it? What would they look at? Hydrogenated?
It might say hydrogenated fats. Yeah.
Partially hydrogenated, all those types of things.
But the other thing is, if you're going a lot to a takeaway and they're deep frying stuff, you're going to get a lot of altered fats anyway, because those are going to be very damaged. And often, if you think about it, they're going to use cheap corn oil or something, and they're going to heat it up. They're going to repeatedly heat it up. It's very damaged. So, you know, even if you don't buy a lot of processed foods, but you go out for a lot of fish and chips, that's probably going to be very damaged.
So what they're doing then is they're taking that polyunsaturated fat more than likely because it's cheap.
Oh, yeah.
They're heating it like to smoking point probably quite readily.
Oh, yeah.
Making rancid over and over and over.
Yeah, and they cool it down, heat it up. That's damage, really bad damage. It's really bad. You know, if you want to make your own fish and chips, do it at home with some coconut oil or ghee, you know, and pan fry it, and then you don't, you know, reuse it again. Yeah. Just also, let's just talk about the cholesterol thing, because I often get people who I'm actually telling them to eat more fat, which may sound a little bit strange. But for a lot of people, fat is still a bit of a dirty word. It's still something that, you know, people really want to keep away from. But let me just ask people a few questions. These are signs that you may need some more fat in your diet. First of all, dry skin. Now, dry skin can mean other things. It could mean you've got an allergic reaction. You might have, you know, a reaction to chemicals, or you've been out in the sun or whatever. But dry skin is because sebum is produced by our skin to protect it. It's a natural moisturizer. And fatty acids are important for the production of sebum. So first one, dry skin. If you are following a low-carb diet and you don't feel great, so you're feeling very low in energy, and you're on a low-carb diet, often what we find is that you're not eating enough fat, because fat is an energy source. Our bodies quite like to use fat actually as a fuel. And of course, if you're very low carb, your body's saying, I'm starving, I need to burn something. And if you're also very low in fat, it is going to struggle. It's not going to have anything to burn for energy. And the same with, say you're training, and I know obviously you're starting this CrossFit sort of 8-week challenge. If you're finding that your physical performance is not as good as it used to be, or you are not putting on muscle. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because the steroidal hormones like testosterone, which we know is very important for muscle, is made from cholesterol. Cholesterol, our body will make, but also we need saturated fat for that as well. So if you've cut out all your fat, then it might well be that actually your sex hormones, which are made from cholesterol, get a bad rap, and they're out of balance or they're low. And this is relevant to men and women. So if your periods are starting to go away, or they're just irregular, or you're struggling to get pregnant, or you're a man and you're feeling very low in mood, you're depressed, you're not building muscle, it may be that your sex hormones are out. And we need cholesterol to produce those. In the same way, if you're very stressed, cortisol is also made from cholesterol. So cholesterol is vitally important for your health. And if you...
But people often say, and this is, I can hear the argument coming from people like my mum, I have high cholesterol, so I need to keep my fats low.
Nah, but that's a different topic altogether, because the question is, why have you got high cholesterol? And there's lots of reasons why someone might have high cholesterol. So, for example, if you are low thyroid, your cholesterol is more likely to be high because you're not metabolizing things as well. Your metabolism is much more reduced. And one of the first things we see when people are diagnosed with hypothyroidism is high cholesterol. If you have poor liver detoxification, you can have high cholesterol. If you drink a lot of alcohol or fructose or fruit juices or smoothies, those will increase triglycerides, which are converted, and therefore you could raise your cholesterol. I often see people who drink a lot of alcohol, and the first thing I will look at are their triglyceride levels and their cholesterol levels, and they're often high. That is sugar is far more likely to cause problems for your heart and your cholesterol levels than fat.
Mm.
So
yes,
there is a very different connection between your, what you're eating and your cholesterol level. There is also a question about, well, even if I do have high cholesterol, is that a problem? Because the research to link high cholesterol and actual getting heart disease is not as strong as people would like to think. There are more facts. I'm not saying it's not a problem. Cholesterol can be a problem for heart disease, but there are other factors involved in the risk factors of you getting a heart event, cardiovascular event, or even a stroke. And that would include things like inflammatory markers, high homocysteine, fibrinogen, which is about how clotty your blood is, and the type of cholesterol. Have you got very low density LDL, which is much more of a risk factor? What is your HDL like? Is that low or is it high? So there's other factors involved in your cardiovascular risk, not just cholesterol. But the link between saturated fat and cholesterol is not actually very strong. So don't think that by eating a bit of ghee butter, you're suddenly going to have very high cholesterol. Now, there is a caveat there, and that is that there are some people who have genetic variations, including something called the ApoE4, and that's you're born with, that when you do eat a lot of saturated fats, that can cause your cholesterol to be perhaps higher than someone else's. So there are genetic variations, which mean that some people are more vulnerable than others. You can get that tested. I test people all the time for it. And often you see it in a family history. So you might see that there is, oh, my granddad had a heart attack, so and so on. But still bear in mind, there are other factors involved in heart disease. High homocysteine is a big one. And that's also involved in Alzheimer's risk, for example. So, there are many other factors to consider. And I would certainly urge people to watch how much fructose, sugar, alcohol, beer they are drinking if they are worried about their triglyceride levels, for example. So the government recommendations for fat generally is around about 30% of your diet, which I think is good, but the predominantly amount of that, what I would say to people is, what we do know is that the mono unsaturated fats like olive oil, avocados, or a plate of olives or macadamia nuts, for example, those we do know are very heart healthy, very reasonably stable, so you can use them at low temperature cooking. Not as vulnerable as things like the walnut oils and the hemp oil and chia oil to being destroyed, and therefore make that a large part of your intake. Think Mediterranean diet, oily fish and avocados and olives and macadamia nuts and so on. That's what they do. And then if you, when you're cooking, go for a heat stable fat, coconut oil, butter, ghee, whatever. And then make sure as well during the week, you try and get in more omega-3s, so oily fish. I always like to say to people, you know, particularly if you've got very dry skin, try and get 3 portions, say, a week. I know that's more than the government guidelines, but I just feel that, you know, often people's diets are so skewed to the omega-6s that actually you need to up your omega-3. So, you know, sardines, mackerel, trout, salmon, herrings, kippers, anchovies, you know, you could just whack those in a sauce or something. All of those are good sources of your omega-3s. Even prawns actually contain omega-3s. So if you don't really like fish, but you like prawns, get some prawns.
I do struggle with those oily fish myself. I can do the trout, I can do salmon, but when it starts getting into the little fish and
yeah. And you know, and again, I partly the reason I say that is because I work a lot with children, and children often quite like prawns. But they're really keen on some of the others. But get those in. And I don't mind if people have a bit of smoked salmon or a bit of smoked mackerel. Just don't make smoked food the only fish you eat. It is very salty. It has been processed. The other thing I'd say is if you're cooking salmon, don't stick it in a microwave and cook it, because those microwaves are much more likely to be damaging the very vulnerable omega-3 fats. So, you know, shallow fry it or quickly steam it, grill it. Yeah. So anything like that is better than a microwave going through it, to be perfectly honest. And then also think about, you know, getting a few seeds in your diet every day, just a tablespoon. You don't need to eat a whole bag. But chia, flax, hemp seeds, walnuts are also a good source of omega-3s. You know, and if you are someone who likes to use a bit of flaxseed oil on salad dressings, that's great. But don't heat it, and keep the flaxseed oil or the omega blend oil that you've got in the fridge, because you shouldn't really just have it in your cupboard, even if it's a dark cupboard. They are very vulnerable. So I always say to people, just try and keep them in the fridge. And I tend to, I mean, we eat a lot of nuts and seeds because I do a lot of recipes with nuts and seeds. So I buy fairly small bags, but if I was buying a big bag and I only wanted to use a little bit, I'd probably put the rest in the fridge.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just if I wasn't going to use it, you know, for a while, because again, even nuts and seeds can be vulnerable to damage.
Oh, interesting.
And nut butters are a good way of getting extra omega-3s in, or omega-6s in. A lot of them are more omega-6. But again, you know, just be careful about don't stick it right near the sun, and, you know, because again, they have been processed a lot more than just, say, a bag of raw nuts. But, you know, I tend to keep those in the fridge as well.
Okay. Oh, interesting. I would have never thought to keep my nuts in the fridge. And I have a lot of nuts in my house.
Oh, sorry. One thing I should say, just talking about fat, because a lot of people worry about, you know, putting on weight and so on. Fat is really satisfying. So if you're someone that's, you know, trying to lose weight, you've gone perhaps, I don't know, very low carb, and you're not satisfied after a meal. You know, you still, I want something else. Just add a little bit of fat, and that you'll find is a lot more satisfying and will often stabilize your blood sugar, but just it gives you that mouthfeel as well. So for people, sometimes just a few nuts, or, you know, if you've had some avocado with a meal, that will feel much more than if you had taken it out. So if you're someone that never really feels satisfied after eating, try looking at how much fat you're incorporating.
Okay. So there's one other oil that I want to discuss just before we finish off, because it's one that I hear about a lot and I'm not really sure about, which is rapeseed oil.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah.
Where does it fit in terms of the types of oils? Is it a good oil to use, or is it going to be classed with our main vegetable, like every other vegetable oil, or is it more like olive oil? Is it something we should be consuming?
Yeah. So there is a very big difference, and this is where the confusion comes, because if you Google it, often in the States they call it canola oil or canola oil. Canola oil.
Canola is the same as rapeseed.
Yeah. So but it's not really in the UK the same, because in the UK, I would say that there are some very good rapeseed oils out there. Now, canola oil is normally produced, say, from Canada, from rapeseed. I mean, it's still rapeseed, but often being very highly processed.
Okay, that's a massive, like corn oil. Canola in Canada is a massive, cupboard is full of it for frying.
It's the cheapest cooking oil on the market. You know, it's highly processed. Sometimes it's actually also blended with hydrogenated soya and things like that as well. Whereas if you look in the UK, we do have some good farms that are selling cold pressed rapeseed oil. That is very different. So, and rapeseed, when you look at, you know, rapeseed oil, in terms of the fatty acid spectrum, you will see that it is actually a very good source of monounsaturated fats. It's not saturated, so that's why, you know, it comes in bottles and you can pour it. But it does mean that you can heat it slightly higher than, say, for example, you know, olive oil even, and it will contain a few other nutrients, a bit of vitamin E. It will contain a bit of omega-3 as well. But I mean, again, I wouldn't use it for really high temperature cooking, but you could use it in a similar way to good quality olive oil. You know, but I would go for a British cold pressed version, where you know that it hasn't been, you know, indoctrinated with anything else or whatever. And I think that is partly why there has been a lot of confusion about the two different types of oils, because a lot of the research has been on, you know, the Canadian stuff and so on, rather than this good quality cold pressed rapeseed.
Okay, because it's something that seems to be really creeping in at the moment, whether it's like the hot new oil that everybody should be using. And I have people coming to the shop trying to sell me products for the pantry. I hear about recipes and it's like, oh no, but it's rapeseed oil. It's rapeseed oil. So I'm going, okay.
Yeah, that's why if you are buying it, I would just go and look at the website and get information about how have they produced it, how have they processed it, where has it come from, you know, before.
Is it better to use the cold oil? I know you say cold pressed. Is it better to not cook it and use it to drizzle again? Like in place
you can cook
oil?
with it like olive oil, but a lower temperature cooking. But some people prefer just to use it as a, you know, as a salad dressing. It's very nice actually as a salad dressing. I still tend to cook much more here with coconut oil, you know. And the one thing I should say about coconut oil is it has some additional benefits. So it contains lauric acid and caprylic acid, which have antimicrobial and immune supporting properties, which we know about. So for yeast infections, bacterial infections, so supporting the immune system. I mean, that's why a lot of people will rub it onto their skin, you know, even for sort of grazes and burns and so on. And it's a medium chain triglyceride. Now, what that means is that your body will process it very quickly in the liver as an energy source. So again, that's partly why a lot of athletes may take a spoonful of it before they go out on a long endurance run, because the body will then, once it's used up the glucose, it will tap into medium chain triglycerides, because the body can, you know, it's clever. It knows it can use those very quickly. And there's been quite a lot of good studies on using medium chain triglycerides in Alzheimer's, because the brain can use it as a fuel. But that tends to be more NCT oils studies rather than just coconut oil. But coconut oil is still very good. It's a good source of them. But for some of my clients, we actually use a pure NCT oil for Alzheimer's.
What would the source of those purer ones be? What would the source be of those purer ones?
Generally, they take it from coconut oil, but they just almost concentrate the NCT part, Yeah. Just getting, I mean, they're not cheap, but they are, if you're doing it to help with, say, epilepsy or ketogenic diets or Alzheimer's, then you just want the pure MCT oil. Yeah, but they're expensive, but that's more specific for certain health conditions.
Oh, excellent. Brilliant. Well, you know what, Christine, let's wrap up there because, again, we said half an hour and it's now 40 minutes. But just a quick general wrap up. So I just want to say, so we're going to stick with our saturated fats like coconut oil and ghee for our cooking. Ideally, lower temperature cooking, you could use olive oil and you could use like rapeseed oil. And then you can stick with your like avocado oils, walnut oils, seed oils as well as drizzles or
dips or adding into dressings. You know, even homemade mayo, things like that, but don't heat them.
Don't heat them. Brilliant. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who's joined us today. I hope you found that helpful. I hope you found it informative. I know it's one of the topics that comes up quite a bit with people in the shop. So there we go. Now we know the fact of it. So, thank you, Christine, for joining me. Thank you, everybody who's joined us live online today. And you'll be able to find us again on YouTube and on the Primal Roost website. So have a lovely weekend and take care.